it's Emmy from Mercatus. If you're feeling the pressure to compete with delivery, Walmart, Amazon, Instacart, you're not alone. The reality is, the math on delivery doesn't always work for most regional grocers. In this conversation, I'm joined by Lee Lambeth, who breaks down what does work, from the real unit economics behind fulfillment to the picking methods and operational decisions that make pickup profitable. Lee, you've spent years working alongside regional grocers navigating the shift to digital. What's the biggest thing that's changed about how they think about fulfillment over the last year, 2, 3 years?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that comes to mind is just that cost to serve, right? If you think about early days of e-commerce, it was kind of the wild, wild west. It was a gunslinger approach. What's going to work? What's not going to work? And it was really a effort to throw things against the wall to see what would stick. So it was more important to take care of ingesting an order, picking and fulfilling that order, and handing it off at curbside, whether it was for pickup or delivery. As this has evolved over time, you see retailers really trying to figure out, okay, now that we've got process and procedures laid out a little bit more effectively, how do we beat down the cost to serve? We realize that we don't have the customer there shopping for us anymore, and that we are shopping on their behalf. So we have to really refine the entirety of the shop from the initial start of the pick through the pick pass all the way to the handoff of the order, and making sure that we're being very efficient so that the cost to serve is actually negated to some extent, right? So that's one of the biggest areas that I think you see retailers focusing on these days.
Free and faster delivery from Walmart, Amazon, and Instacart has reset shopper expectations. What happens when a regional grocer tries to compete with that directly?
That's tough. It's a tough challenge to compete directly with those big box retailers, Walmart and Amazon and some of those others. I would actually say, instead of trying to compete directly against the free and fast delivery, lean into the things that make you different from those. The ability to really engage with your customer, to have some type of connectivity, is what in my mind separates the regional from the big box retailer. In fact, there's about 4 different things I would lean into. One is the accuracy of order. So when you talk about speed and free and fast delivery, free and fast are one thing, but the accuracy of an order can sometimes be compromised because you're rushing to get that order picked and fulfilled and out to the customer. Do you compromise accuracy for that customer? So if the order is fulfilled and it's not accurate, that's not a good experience. And in the sake of expediency, that sometimes actually goes awry. The second thing that I'd focus on is the communication with the customer. In these fast picks, you don't have the real ability, in my opinion, to really leverage the back and forth communication, to talk about the substitutions, to talk about the out of stocks, to really convey what you're picking and fulfilling in that order. I know a lot of customers actually value and appreciate the fact that having the ability to go back and forth with their fulfillment or picker is really important to them, on how they engage and how that experience actually ends up being for them. The third piece I would lean into is probably personalization. There's a personalized aspect of fulfillment to begin with, right? It's a concierge level engagement of sorts, because you are picking on behalf of someone else. You're fulfilling the order that potentially could end up on their dinner table that night. And over time, you begin to see the seeing faces over and over to your store if you're good at what you do. So creating that connectivity, which is my fourth point, is what I would really focus into. And that connectivity really comes from, again, the accuracy, the communication, and the personalized experience that you're able to generate and produce for that customer.
If delivery alone isn't the answer, what is? Why does pickup represent a more sustainable path for regional grocers specifically?
I mean, let's be honest, delivery serves a purpose, right? The speed and efficiency in which you can get an order and never leave your couch does mean something to some consumers. And I understand why you would want to have delivery. And delivery has to be in your option. You have to meet that customer at the intersection of where they want to be met, whether it's pickup, whether it's delivery, whether it's in-store shopping. So definitely it's an important part of the mix. But it's also cold and impersonal to some extent, right? There is no interaction. The best parts of your brand are not necessarily represented through delivery. You don't get to really display who your brand or what your brand represents, because oftentimes delivery is done by a third party. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you don't have the experience that a customer has in store or at curbside, where you're representing your own brand with your own people. It also doesn't allow for that back and forth communication that I think is really, really important. There is something to be said for building and fostering a relationship with store personnel over time so they understand who you are, how you like your groceries picked and fulfilled, what type of substitutions you look for when items aren't available. And it really becomes, again, this concierge level of service to you as an individual. It makes me as a consumer feel special when I actually have this fulfillment that's done and the pickup and the interaction that happens at curbside versus delivery. I still likely get the majority of my groceries, but I don't necessarily have the ability to communicate with the store team and understand what exactly happened inside my fulfillment process. Did I have substitutions? Did I get what I wanted? Even just the little nuances of being able to have a conversation because I see the same person time and time after makes a difference to me and creates loyalty back to that brand. Delivery at times by itself does not necessarily create the loyalty to the retailer that you would expect. It is a service for sure. It does serve a need and it provides something that some consumers want. But I would argue that pickup by itself or as one of the offerings there creates loyalty over time if you have the right people not only fulfilling the order but handing it off at curbside.
In theory, a pickup program sounds straightforward. Take the order, pick it, hand it off. Where does operational complexity come in? What does a grocer who underestimates the operational complexity actually run into? How do you solve for this?
There's a couple places there where I think complexity comes into play and where you can actually go awry on this process. The first part is just in the fulfillment itself. What are your policies in your process for handling out of stocks and substitutions, right? Do you substitute the next available product that's the same brand name and it's the next larger size up? If you do that, do you charge the consumer the same price or do you charge them the substitution price? How are you communicating these substitutions or out of stocks to the customer? You would leave it at the discretion of the picker to decide what the substitution looked like and so forth. But now that's changed a lot over the years. Sometimes you have the ability to designate your own substitution. So I really think your whole substitution and out of stock handling is where it really begins. The second piece of that is around the multi-pick. If you are doing multi-pick, how do you avoid commingling product? It's easy to say, hey, I'm going to pick 2 or 3 orders at a time, but the complexity is where you actually begin to pick those products off the shelf and load them to your picking cart. Not intermingling those items and keeping them separated can be a challenge, and technology has to help you out in that particular case, in my opinion. The next part that I would talk about is probably the staging and destaging of product. You want to have some systematic approach that allows you, again, to ensure once you stage a product and then you destage it for handoff at curbside, that you get all the product that is associated to that order. It's easy. It can be easy at times to leave behind a bag or a tote, especially, in those early morning hours or late evening hours where perhaps the e-commerce staff has gone home and someone else from the store has to come in and destage an order for handoff. So having, a simple but yet very accurate approach to this is really, really critical. And then at the end, I'd say it's the experience, right? The experience at curbside. So there's a reason that there's geolocation services and that there's people trying to get to the curbside and take away that long, lengthy wait. That's one aspect of it that you want to look at first and foremost. How do you keep the consumer from having to sit at curbside for 5, 10, 15 minutes? The other piece is, how is that interaction? Is it genuine? Is it sincere? Does it leave a lasting impression? Again, you as a consumer are choosing to have someone else shop for you to fulfill your order. You want to have a lasting, memorable experience every time you go there. You want to know that your products were picked accurately. You want to know that the substitutions matched your preferences. And then at the curbside handoff, it's a service that you really look to feel special at the end of that handoff by having an engaging conversation or some type of experience that's lasting.
It sounds like technology is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in high-performance pickup programs. What are the capabilities that matter most and why?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, technology needs to make it simple, right? This does not need to be complex, but it needs to help make your life as an e-commerce picking person easier. The first thing I would say is talking about single pick versus multi-pick. How does the technology help you determine where product in a multi-pick is actually going? Which bag does it go into? Which tote does it go into? To avoid the intermingling of products, right? Accuracy to me still is the most important part of the pick, which sometimes can be compromised if you don't have the right technology, specifically when doing a multi-pick scenario. Where are you looking at these days to leverage technology, specifically AI-driven models, to help you with recommendations on substitutions? There is technology out there now that can help you recommend substitutions. Here at Mercatus and DX Pro, we actually have recommendation models. So you're not having to necessarily determine at picker level what item to substitute, but you can actually leverage data points to help you pick the most accurate substituted item for a product that's out of stock. So looking at ways in which you can do those and leverage technology is a plus. Again, at the destaging and staging portion of the business, I would say that technology plays a critical role. Being able to scan product in and know where that product or that order is actually staged, and then being able to destage using the same technology to accurately get all of the bags or totes that are going out to the curbside is really, really critical. So those are three elements that I would say technology plays a critical role in making the job of the picker easier and simpler day in and day out.
One of the trickiest moments in a pickup experience is the handoff. The customer pulls up and suddenly everything either works or it doesn't. How does DX Pro handle that moment, and why does it matter more than people realize?
When a customer arrives, first and foremost, one of the things that can really help a retailer is the expediency out to curbside. And that DX Pro has focused on is our enhanced curbside pickup with geolocation services. Ideally, if you're a retailer in a perfect world, you would meet the customer at curbside as they're pulling up. And with our services and our geolocation abilities, once the consumer penetrates and breaks that geofencing, we now are alerted that they are on their way. So however that is set up to let you know that they're on the way is a benefit. Now I can destage the order as the fulfilling agent or as the picker, and I could be at the curbside when they arrive. If you think about that, one of the biggest barriers over time has been the wait time at curbside. And it's been something that retailers have been focusing on for a number of years. The technology that we baked in is allowing us to negate and bring down that wait time to ensure a great customer experience. The other thing that I would note that's really, really important, again, within DX Pro that we offer is our staging and destaging process is leveraging the best in technology to ensure accuracy of rounding up those items that have to go out to curbside. So we have the ability to scan in the order into a specific area, whether it's an ambient, a freezer, or cooler area. And then when you use that same technology, you can descan or destage that product so that you are getting 100% of what you shop for me as a customer. There's nothing in my mind that's a little more frustrating for a customer to get home and to realize, hey, I'm missing some of my order, right? Because then there's this whole process that has to happen. You know, you're contacting the store, and usually the store is saying, hey, well, we'll hold on to it. Feel free to come back. We'll have it here when you get ready. So either I, as a customer, have to go back to the store, which generates another trip for me, or I have to seek a refund, which is a whole different process. So where DX Pro really leverages that technology to help creates a better experience. And this is what it's all about in my mind from an e-commerce perspective. It's about convenience and experience. And if you can take the technology and not only make it work for you as the fulfiller of the order, but to make the experience better for the customer, then long term you win the battle.
For regional grocers wanting to expand pickup beyond the center of the store into specialty departments like bakery, deli, and catering, how does the right technology unlock the perimeter of the store, and what does it take to make it work?
Yeah, first and foremost, the perimeter of the store is where most of your regional grocers are reporting the biggest growth, the biggest opportunities for growth. Center store is center store, right? And I don't want to discredit center store in any way, but a box of Cheerios is a box of Cheerios. A gallon of Tide is Tide. But what differentiates retailers from one another and from big box retailers is the offerings, the unique offerings that they offer. They also represent higher margins, and they can help to create the competitive advantage. I think one of the things you really need to look at is, are you able to display on your site all of your offerings and showcase them in a way that's meaningful to you, that represents your brand the same way it would as if you were in-store shopping? So If you have a great bakery that's known for its cakes, or if you promote Angus beef in your beef department, or if you have seasonal produce that you're able to source from a local grower, those things matter, right? You want to be able to bring and showcase those within your e-commerce site and through the technology. At DX Pro, we have a number of different ways we can do that. One is through the use of our different widgets and the ability to call out these products in unique ways, whether it's creating banners using the widgets or creating a widget that really makes it a focal point. When I say it, the product that you're trying to promote is one way that, we have a lot of different tools that are baked in that you can really leverage to showcase these products in a way in which is meaningful to your customer and demonstrates that you are different from your competitors. The other thing that I would say associated with really kind of trying to differentiate there is we have what we call as a mini shop. So you can have a store within a store experience. So if there's certain items that you want to designate separately from the normal pick, maybe they take more time to prepare. Example would be maybe a catering item. Let's say a fruit platter, which normally a store will take 12 to 24 hours to prepare. You can create mini shops within our platform. And what that mini shop allows you to do is take a number of products, a handful of products that you as the retailer designate, put them in a mini shop, and it creates a separate shopping experience because it is going to take some type of different action at store level to get these out to you. I can still do my normal shop and have a checkout experience with my normal everyday items that perhaps I want to get as early as today. But within that mini shop, I can call out my special offerings, denote that the pickup time and or the preparation time takes a little bit longer, and I can actually have a separate checkout experience for that. So perhaps I decide I want to shop on a Tuesday and pick my normal products up that afternoon. I can do that with the regular shop. But then I want a fruit platter for this upcoming Saturday for an event that I'm going to host. I can also create that shopping experience within the mini shop, purchase it at that time, but not have to come back until Saturday to actually pick it up. So instead of having two different experiences where I have to come onto the site on 2 different days and create 2 different shops, I can actually do it all in one, leveraging the different functionality within DX Pro and doing it at one time.
What does a grocer need to track to know whether their pickup program is actually working? And what are the numbers that tell you something is broken before the customer starts complaining?
I'll give you 3 that I would focus on if I was a grocer. First is my fill rate. So I would look at every order that came in and have it tracked with some type of metric that's in place, determining what my fill rate was per order. If I had 10 items and 9 were fulfilled, I've got a 90% fill rate. But what I would challenge on my fulfill rate are a couple of things. One, what is my substitution out of stock policy? How am I handling that, right? So if I'm constantly seeing a 80 or 90% fill rate, it would lead me to challenge my team on the substitution of the right products. Are you substituting? Are you looking to substitute? It would also lead me to challenge the team on where are you looking for the product. It's not uncommon for product to run out at the shelf, but sometimes there's product on ancillary locations within the store, on end caps, on freestanding displays, and in different secondary spots. So are you looking for those? So fulfill rate for me is always a critical one, especially if I have the ability to substitute on behalf of the customer. Second one I would look at is the picks or items per minute. And this one, as I talk about speed and efficiency, I always will say that accuracy comes first. But I also need to be able to have some type of speed within my fulfillment operations to ensure I can open up as many time slots and as much capacity as possible. So I'm going to look at the average number of items picked per minute. And there's going to be a standard that I'm going to set as a retailer. And what I'm looking for is the outliers, right? Who is picking extremely fast and how does their accuracy look versus who's extremely slow? And those slow ones really, it identifies that opportunity potentially for some retraining, some education on how to do a better job of picking for the customer. So looking at that, constantly monitoring it, but again, reinforcing that accuracy becomes first before speed. And the third one that I would look at is on time or late orders. So traditionally in this space, late orders are defined as the following. If the order was due at 3 p.m. and the order is not closed out and completed, meaning that the pick is not completed by 3:01 p.m., the order is late. Whether the customer shows up at 3 o'clock, 3:15, or 4 p.m. is really not the issue here. You have to make the assumption that every one of your customers is going to show up at the time that they said or picked for their pickup time. And so your goal as a retailer is to have those orders completely picked, staged, and ready to go at that time. 1 minute late, again, whether the customer has arrived or not, should be defined as a late order. So looking at those three critical areas that I think if a retailer focused on those three alone, and there are several others that you could look at, but those three alone should directionally give you guidance on how your operation is running and where your pain points are, and more importantly, how to correct those pain points.
Once a pickup program is running profitably, what's the next move? How are the best operators building on that foundation?
Once you're running profitably, the first thing I would take a good hard look at is, do you have an opportunity to expand your offerings? First and foremost, I would look at my hours of operation. I once worked for a retailer and our hours of operation were 10 to 6 p.m. You can pick up your first order at 10, last order went out the door that evening for pickup at 6 p.m. Over time, we began to look at that and we changed the hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we picked up an additional 4 hours of service offerings during the course of the day. And it was amazing to see what it actually did to the growth trajectory of that company by having those additional 4 hours. I would also look at the capacity in certain key time slots of the day. You should be able to run some type of reporting within systems to understand, are you completely filling up each capacity? So if you see that 4 to 7, which are traditionally the busiest grocery hours of the day, are always full, it tells you that someone is probably missing an opportunity to get their groceries at that time. Does that mean they have to pick a later time, or does that mean that they actually pick a different retailer to actually go to and get those groceries? So looking at those and determining, okay, 4 to 7, I'm filling up. Do I have a chance to expand? Can I offer another 2 slots per hour? What would that take from a labor standpoint? What would need to be true in order for me to do that? But if I'm looking at what the profitability in the company as a whole and how I've got things really finessed out, I'm going to tackle those two first and foremost. My job would be to always grow my business. If I do that, there's going to be a level of loyalty that's created over time as well, because the customers that shop e-commerce traditionally don't just shop you for e-commerce. They actually shop you in store. There's a loyalty factor that is tracked and known to be true in the industry, that the more they shop on e-commerce, the more they become brand loyal. And so you'll see this hybrid experience where they're both in store and online with you shopping through your e-commerce experience. What actually is happening is those ancillary trips to other retailers are completely eliminated over time, or at least minimized to a standpoint that they're no longer impacting you, or they're impacting you in a positive way because you're getting more trips over time with that same customer.
For regional grocers who get this right, what does their business actually look like 2 or 3 years in compared to where they started?
There's a couple things that I would say. And the first one is one single word. It's loyalty. It's loyalty to your brand as a retailer, right? If you're doing this well and you are accurate, you're efficient, and you create a lasting experience, consumers will come back to you. Think about your favorite restaurant. And when you go to your favorite restaurant, do you go there just for speed? Probably not. You probably go there for a couple of different reasons. One, the food's good, and two, the service is really good. And people will tell you all the time, over and over, using this example, that the reason they go back to the same restaurant is because of those two factors: good food, great service. That's what you're trying to create at the curbside as a regional grocer, or as a grocer in general, to create that lasting experience that creates loyalty, that makes me as the consumer want to continue to come to you every time that I think about shopping online. The second thing that I would say is it creates a competitive advantage. So big box retailers have certain advantages that you're not going to be able to compete with as a local grocer. However, where I think they have a weak spot is that loyalty that is created through the experience. So the more that you can leverage and create that competitive advantage by creating those interactions that are meaningful, that are lasting, and the accuracy of the pick is right, I think you create a reason not to leverage the big box as your option for shopping online. So if I'm a grocer, I'm going to lean into both loyalty and competitive advantage created by my offering.
Okay, pop quiz question. What are your pickup program pet peeves?
My pickup pet peeves. Yeah, pickup program pet peeves. First is length of wait at curbside. This is supposed to be an experience that's meaningful and it's supposed to be expedited to some extent. So if I have to sit outside for 10 minutes, I'm not happy. I've seen retailers now who are getting this down to as little as 2 minutes or less at curbside. So the longer I'm sitting in a parking lot, and especially if I'm going through this process without being acknowledged, I'm really getting frustrated very quickly. The other pet peeve I have is the accuracy of my order. There is nothing more frustrating than getting home and finding out something's been left behind. And then, more importantly, the offer to get that product is not usually we'll bring it to you. It's, hey, just come on back, we'll have it ready. Right. So I look for accuracy and I look for speed and efficiency at curbside for my pet peeves to not be an issue.
If you're rethinking your fulfillment strategy, this is exactly where you need to start. We've pulled together what we're seeing across the market, what's working and what's not, and turned it into a practical guide for building a profitable pickup program. You can download it now and start putting a model in place that actually pays you back over time.